Welcome to Cat Has Questions, curiosity, stories, and the strange corners of everyday life. Hello, I'm your host, Kat, and today we're going to Brazil, specifically just outside Rio de Janeiro, to a quiet hill overlooking the ocean, a place where you can hear the wind, see the city in the distance, and still feel very alone despite being so close to everything. Because on that hill, in 1966, two grown men were found lying side by side, dressed neatly, no signs of violence, no struggle, no obvious cause of death, just lead masks covering their eyes. They were homemade, so very roughly cut, and heavy enough that someone had to deliberately put them on. And tucked into one man's pocket was a handwritten note with instructions that end abruptly, like something was supposed to happen next and didn't. This is the lead masks case. This is one of those stories that feels less like a crime and more like you accidentally walked in on the final moments of someone else's failed experiment. Before we even talk about what happened on that hill, I want you to understand how quiet this case is. There's no screaming, no chaos, no frantic escape. This is a story where everything happens calmly, and that's what makes it unsettling. Because most crimes announce themselves, this one feels like it unfolded exactly as planned. And when investigators arrived, they weren't met with confusion. They were met with order. Two men, side by side, waiting. Which means the most important question isn't what went wrong. It's what did they believe was supposed to go right. So let's get into today's story. It's August of 1966 in Niterói, Brazil, a coastal city directly across from the bay of Rio de Janeiro. You can actually see Rio from here. This isn't like a remote wilderness area. It's close enough to feel connected, but far enough to feel quiet. Two men live here, Manuel Pereira de Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana. They're electronics technicians. They repair radios. They work with wiring, circuits, frequencies. They're just very smart guys. They're the kind of people who take things apart just to see how they work. On the day they disappeared, nothing feels dramatic. They tell their families they're heading out on business. No emotional goodbyes, no signs of distress. No one senses that anything is wrong at all. They take a bus into Niterói. They stop at a local store. They buy a few ordinary things, and then they vanish. 2 days later, a young boy is flying a kite on a hill called Morro de Ventem. I'm probably mispronouncing some of this. At first, he thinks he sees trash in the grass, but then he sees clothing. And then he realizes there are bodies. Two men lying on their backs, side by side. Not tangled, not collapsed, just kind of positioned. When police arrive, the scene doesn't look chaotic at all. It looks calm, almost intentional. The men are wearing suits, and they have raincoats folded neatly over their bodies. They have dress shoes still on their feet, not like kicked off or loose. This isn't how people look after a struggle. It's how people look when they lie down on purpose like they're taking a nap. Covering their eyes are lead masks. They're crude, so they're roughly cut, sharp-edged, shaped just enough to block the vision. So it's pretty heavy. I mean, it's literally like, a rock-type material, but carved into basically sunglasses. Nearby, investigators find an empty water bottle, packaging that held 2 towels, and in one man's pocket, a folded note. That's the note I was describing to you at the beginning. There was no sign of a fight, no sign of robbery, no signs of panic, and immediately investigators are unsettled because whatever happened here did not involve force. And here's something investigators couldn't ignore. The way the bodies were positioned matters. They weren't twisted, they weren't collapsed mid-movement. There was no evidence that they tried to stand back up, which suggests they chose where to lie down. They placed the raincoats deliberately, not worn, but folded, as if they anticipated needing them later. This wasn't desperation. This wasn't expectation. And the detail alone pushed investigators away from theories involving violence or panic. Whatever happened next, both men believed they were prepared for it. I want to tell you the detail that's pretty unsettling for investigators still decades later. The note didn't say why they were there. It didn't say what they expected to happen. But there was a notebook, and the first page had a list of electronic materials and spare parts. The second page said, quote, on Sunday, 1 tablet after the meal. Monday, 1 tablet in the morning on an empty stomach. Tuesday, 1 tablet after the meal. Wednesday, 1 tablet before going to bed. The third and most cryptic page said, at 16:30, be at the agreed place. 18:30, swallow the capsule after the effect. Protect metals, wait for the signal. There was no foul play suspected. There were no final instructions, no backup plan, no, if this doesn't work, just a wait signal. There's no signature, no explanation, no context at all. It does read like a message meant for someone. It reads like instructions written for them. The phrasing is clipped, almost technical. It's like a checklist, and checklists are comforting. They imply structure, order, or control. Whoever wrote this believed the steps were clear enough not to need more explanation. And the most chilling part isn't what's written, it's what's missing. There's no final step, no warning, no contingency, just a wait signal. So this note becomes the most important piece of evidence. Let's talk about the language of this note, because it doesn't sound emotional, it doesn't sound scared, it sounds procedural. Be at the agreed place, ingest the capsules, await the signal. This isn't how people write when they're improvising. It's how people write when they've rehearsed something, or when they're following instructions that already exist somewhere else. And notice what's missing. No names, no explanations, no reasoning. Which suggests the writers believed both men already understood the purpose. That the note wasn't documentation, it was confirmation. Almost like, this is what we agreed to. And the most unsettling part, the phrase, await signal. That implies passivity. They weren't supposed to do anything else. They were supposed to wait for something external to happen to them. Autopsies are performed on the men, and investigators expect to find answers. Instead, they get more ambiguity. Because of rain exposure and decomposition, there's no definitive cause of death that can be determined. There are no visible signs of injury, no internal trauma, no defensive wounds, and no detectable poison. However, in my research, I did read that the toxicology report kind of like was mishandled or not completed just based on other circumstances. So I don't know how full of a toxicology report was actually completed. The capsules mentioned in the note are never found, which leaves investigators stuck with the most frustrating possibility. Whatever they ingested worked quickly and left nothing behind. Police can't confirm suicide. They can't confirm murder. They can't even confirm an accident. The official death is ruled undetermined. And in cases like this, undetermined doesn't feel neutral. It kind of feels like a failure. The masks quickly become the focal point. I mean, obviously because it's a very strange thing to find with the men, considering everything else seemed so normal. The lead masks deserve more attention than they usually get because they aren't symbolic, they're functional. Lead is heavy, it's uncomfortable. It's not something you wear casually. Lead is historically associated with shielding, from radiation, exposure, protection from something unseen, which leads to the question investigators cannot escape, which raises a disturbing possibility. What if the masks weren't meant to hide their eyes, but to protect them? Because if they believed they were about to witness something dangerous, something overwhelming, then covering only the eyes makes sense. These masks don't protect the face, they don't shield the mouth, they block only the eyes, and they remove vision completely because it's literally lead. It suggests they thought the risk was visual, not physical, not chemical, visual. And psychologically, there's something else here. When people willingly remove one of their senses, it often means they trust the process. They're surrendering control, which again, points away from panic and toward belief. Why would two men willingly blind themselves right before doing something that seems risky? And why do it together? Whatever they believed was coming, they thought it was safer not to see it. So some more context as to kind of the circumstances and the time. So to understand why this case unfolded the way it did, you have to understand this time period. In the 1950s and 60s, Brazil had a strong spiritualist movement, including groups known as contactees. These were people who believed communication with extraterrestrial beings was possible, not as science fiction, but as practice. Some believed specific frequencies could trigger contact. So, if they emitted just the right frequency, they could contact extraterrestrial beings. Maybe chemicals could heighten perception, so then you could kind of contact them that way. And that shielding was necessary during exposure. This wasn't like fringe internet lore at the time. It was openly discussed and widely believed in certain circles. There's no proof that Manuel and Miguel belonged to one of these groups, but the language in the note mirrors it very closely, and some people have speculated that they were maybe part of a group like this or were dabbling in it. So the language in the notes, the instructions, the timing, the capsules, waiting for a signal, it's not evidence, but it is context. So what actually happened on that hill? Let's slow this down. One theory suggests a failed experiment involving chemicals or electronics that went wrong. So Manuel and Miguel were electronics technicians. They worked with frequencies, signals, circuits, like I've talked about. One theory suggests they were testing something, possibly involving electromagnetic exposure or chemical enhancement. But here's the problem. There's no evidence of equipment at the scene. No burns, no measurable residue. If this was an experiment, it left no technical footprint. Theory 2 is the contactee belief. This is the theory most people are uncomfortable with, but it fits the details. The note mirrors contactee language used in Brazil during that era. Timed ingestion, waiting for a signal, shielding during exposure. If they believed communication or contact required preparation, then everything they did makes sense. The hill, the isolation, the compliance. And if nothing happened, there was no backup plan. That was it. So maybe they expected to communicate or contact that just never came. The contactee belief would be that maybe there's a few different parts to this. So maybe they bought some sort of drug, ingested something that someone sold them that was bad, but they were told like, oh, this is what you need to do to, contact extraterrestrial beings. Maybe whoever gave it to them actually believed that too. It's hard to say. Theory 3, which was poisoning or suicide, though the lack of detectable poisons makes this difficult to prove. So some suggest the capsules were lethal and the event was intentional. But a suicide pact usually leaves explanations, emotion, finality. This note didn't say goodbye. It says, wait. And that difference matters. So the theory that no one likes also is that they trusted information that was wrong, that they followed instructions given by someone else without verifying the outcome. The belief replaced caution, and when nothing arrived, there was no way back. So what makes this case unsettling isn't violence. It's cooperation. Two men agreeing on a time, following steps they were given or had given themselves, putting on masks, taking something unknown, and then just lying down. They weren't hiding, they weren't running, they really weren't afraid. They were waiting, and whatever they prepared for never arrived. This is Cat Has Questions, so let's ask a few. Why instructions instead of explanations? Clearly, they already felt like they had the explanation needed, so the instructions could be kept short. It's clearly the two of them or with somebody else. They had come up with a plan to do something, but what was that plan and why? What's the why behind it? Why blindfold themselves instead of protecting their bodies? So even if they were going to be exposed to radiation or whatever, if you just protect your eyes, what about literally everything else? So that to me seems super kind of leaning in towards the contactee theory, like they were thinking they were going to experience some sort of like outer body or extraterrestrial experience. Why bring raincoats but no food? This is just logistical. I mean, you're going to get hungry even if it rains. Why leave the note where it would be found? So this one makes me think that they really were not expecting to die, because if they were expecting to die and this was all part of the plan, why would they leave the note out unless they were literally just trying to confuse people? But this is what makes me think they were not expecting to die from whatever they were doing. If this was belief, how deep did it run? If it was trust, who earned it? There are also theories out there that these two men were seen with one man earlier in the day. This cannot be proven, and it hasn't been proven, but some people wonder if there was a third man and somehow he would have more answers as to what happened to these two men. So what happens when people follow the plan and the plan fails? I think honestly, this is probably that case. So the lead mask case lives in the space between curiosity and belief, between logic and trust. We don't know if Manuel and Miguel believed they were about to witness something extraordinary, or if they were victims of misinformation. Did somebody give them bad drugs, bad information that cost them their life? All we know is that they followed instructions, and sometimes that's the most disturbing mystery of all. Because the question isn't just what killed them, it's why they believed they were safe. Thanks for listening to Kat Has Questions this week. If this episode sent you into a spiral, follow the show and send me an email, cathasquestionspod@gmail.com. If you have a good story, questions, comments, concerns, happy to hear them. So please reach out. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next week. Thanks for listening to Kat Has Questions. If you liked this episode, follow the show and share it with someone who loves a good spiral. See you next week.